What's going on, everyone? My name is UnderTheRadar, and welcome to the Draft League Viability. This has been a long time coming, and I'm super excited to be bringing it back to you guys. Real quick, I do want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So the main reason why this series stopped was because I was not enjoying Pokemon at the time, and I feel like whenever somebody doesn't enjoy the content they're making, inevitably their content will be worse. And because the content was worse, I wasn't happy with it, and because I wasn't happy with it, I didn't want to do it. So, I feel as though now that I'm back into Mons, I'm enjoying it again. The content can be a little bit better. I just ordered my second light for my green screen, so the boxes should be a little bit better. And yeah, it's gonna be looking really, really nice here in just a short amount of time. So I figured now is the time to get back on the grind. It's summertime. School is out pretty much, so I wanted to start off the Draft League viabilities by talking about Dhelmise. Now, as you can see, I'm not doing any fancy graphics. I'm not doing any jump cuts because I wanted to make this more simple, raw, uncut of what I talk about and how I just do things. So, Dhelmise is going to be the first one we talk about. Dhelmise is a very interesting Pokemon. Its stats are very, very weird. Very slow, somewhat bulky, really good attack stat. 3 stabs. 3 stabs because of Steelworker being its ability. Because of that, this thing is able to break down literally the main bulky Pokemon on any wall core. For the majority of teams, the most bulky Pokemon on the entire draft are going to be a bulky Water, a bulky Fairy, or a bulky Psychic. Occasionally, you have a bulky Steel. Occasionally, you have a bulky Grass. Occasionally, you have a few other things that could be considered bulky, but for the majority of things, bulky Water, Fairy, Psychic. Those are the big 3. And this thing breaks down every single one of them. Water with amazing moves like Power Whip. And then you have, depending on Z-move rules, you have things like Phantom Force, you have Shadow Claw, and you have one of the best moves in the entire moveset of this thing with Anchor Shot. 80 base power, 100% accuracy, stab because of Steelworker, and it traps. So it can break down, depending on Z-move rules, just with these moves, and it does have reliable recovery in Synthesis. So overall, this thing can break down wall cores on its own. So when you build around this thing, you want to get offensive Pokemon that shine because bulky Waters, Psychics, and Fairies are taken out of the draft, are taken out of the team, or that this thing is able to reliably help. So, big one that comes to mind whenever I was thinking about how I would personally build around this, something that needs bulky Waters, bulky Psychics, bulky Fairies taken out, and one of the coolest Pokemon in the entire world is Keldeo. So Keldeo, it has realistically Hidden Power Electric, or Hidden Power Grass for water types. For Fairy and Psychic types, it has like Hydro Pump and it has like Scald, but aside from that, it can't really touch them. So by being able to take out bulky Psychics and Fairies instantly, Keldeo has a much, much better time. The big thing that people fall into whenever they get Dhelmise is they're expecting it to be a really good physically defensive or especially defensive wall, and it's just not. It has too many weaknesses. It has Fire, Flying, Ice, Ghost, Dark are the big 5, and they're all super, super prominent. Like, if you don't have a Dark type, your team is bad. If you don't have a Fire type, your team is typically considered to be bad. If you don't have some sort of Flying type that can hit, like with Flying Stab, Bird Spam is super, super good. Your team tends to fall a little bit short in some respects. So, having this be a wall, it's super hard. The things that it wants to switch into, so most grass types want to switch into water types, Scalds, but because of its physical, you don't want it to get burned. And if it's Fizdef, it can't take ice beams that well. It doesn't want to be toxic. It doesn't want to do all this other stuff. So this thing isn't going to be the best defensive grass type that you could get. If you want a defensive grass type, okay? If you want a defensive grass type, you need, what the heckaroo? You need to get something like Shaman or something like Celebi, or something like Tangrowth. That is how you get a really good fat grass. This isn't that. This is a really good defensive core breaker for good offensive Pokemon. Now, something to keep in mind with this is you are extremely weak to flying, so bird spam. The same exact thing that I said that you really need on a team, it's super weak to, because like Talonflame, for example, outspeeds and beats down both of these things. Celesteela is pretty scary. Ironically, Celesteela actually is phenomenal pairing with these two, because like this can switch in on electric types pretty well, because usually the best thing it can hit it with is like Shadow Ball, which even then it's not that big of a deal. This doesn't really want to take electric types, so they cover each other pretty well. This can switch in on some fire types. With every single offensive water you get, you need a defensive water. That's just my truthful opinion. So if you're going to get like Keldeo as an offensive water, get something like a Milotic. Get something like an Alomomola. Honestly, Alomomola is something that I would also put with this, because you can Wish Pass to Dhelmise very, very easily. And by Wish Passing to Dhelmise, you keep it very healthy. So I would go Alomomola. So that way you have really good Wish Passing to keep it healthy. This thing can tank a hit, get that fat wish back, and then break something. So super, super good having an offensive and defensive water. And then you want a really good steel type with this, because certain things that beat down most flying types, a lot of flying types don't have ground coverage. Like Lando is one of the very few. And because of that, a good steel type is better than a good rock type. Most rock types that want to switch in on flying types are quad weak to something like Rhydon, Rhyperior, things like that. They're going to lose to like a natural gift grass or a natural gift water. So having a really good steel type is something to keep in mind. And so a big one that I like with this for a low tier is Steelix. Steelix is something that I think works out super, super well, because it's a guaranteed rocker. You have a spin blocker. This doesn't really want to switch in on Scalds. This does want to switch in on Scalds. This is another electric type immunity, as well as a really good flying resist. It can also tank earthquakes, and it doesn't get reliable recovery, which Alomomola also helps with. So you have a really good low tier, like bulky, pivoting-ish, that can also really help Keldeo out in higher tiers. So another thing to keep in mind with Dhelmise is okay, this is something that I think I came up with. I haven't seen anybody else do this, so I'm going to take credit for it, and I'm pretty proud of it. Because it does have base 86 special attack, it can beat down every single form of bulky water as long as you throw on something like Substitute. So I used this to beat down a Vincoon. I substituted up, I had leftovers, I had Giga Drain, and I had Anchor Shot. And then I just ran like a Brave Nature, and that meant that Giga Drain would always KO a sub from Suicune, for example. Things like Milotic, even if you're burnt, if you're behind a sub, you can always tank a Scald behind your sub. So it has good enough bulk for like sub to beat down bulky waters. So having a team that forces a bulky water to come isn't bad, because Dhelmise typically beats them. And if you want to use Dhelmise to shine or bring it every single week, then drafting things that need a bulky water to come is really, really good. Another really good one with this that I think forces bulky waters to come every single time and has really good pivoting is Darmanitan. Some of the best switch-ins to Darmanitan are fat waters. You have Milotic, you have things like Primarina, you have things like I'm really struggling to think of other fat waters, because Alomomola is typically the one that I think of. Manaphy, for example. This doesn't really want to take on Manaphy, but you know what I mean. It forces bulky waters to come in, you U-turn out on them, drop in your Dhelmise, click Power Whip, you kill something. And I think that's the best way to make a Dhelmise work. I really want to fix my green screen. It's actually really bothering me. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. So that is how I would build around Dhelmise, for example. Making sure that you have a Pokemon that beats down bulky waters. You bring a couple offensive mons that ensure that bulky waters have to come, and both of these Pokemon appreciate bulky waters, bulky fairies, and bulky psychics gone. Overall, it's a very standard Pokemon. It's a very easy to build around Pokemon. You just need to understand that this isn't going to be your kill leader. It's not going to be something that is going to be your defensive mon of the season. It's going to be a very heavy support mon for helping out your mons that need bulky waters taken out of the game. It's a very, very, very niche Pokemon, and I like it a lot. But with these 4 beside it, you have rocks, you have Wish Pass, you have pivoting, you have cleaning. Like, I really truly think that Dhelmise, this is how you want to build around it. I would also suggest you getting like a toxic spikes user, so that way you can use this as a spin blocker if needed. This does tend to beat down most rapid spinners. Donphan, for example, is a really prominent rapid spinner. What are some other good ones? The Hitmonlees, the Hitmonchans, and the Hitmontops, really good at spin blocking those. So overall, very, very, very cool Pokemon. I like it a lot. Make sure whatever you do, you build around it in an aspect to where you need bulky waters. They have to come to the battle, and you can easily get in your Dhelmise against them. So if that means a lot of pivoting from mons like Darmanitan to drop in your Dhelmise and kill something, then that's what you need to do. Keldeo, I think, is just one of the best pairs with this thing. When I was thinking about this and I realized how good of a pair it is, also Justified, amazing, because you can get a +1 attack boost. Its attack is abysmal, but with a +1, I've seen SD Keldeo used before. It gets access to Aqua Jet, close combat, things like that. So it's definitely possible. So you're able to sponge up the dark type knockoffs that are going to want to come in on Dhelmise. So very, very, very cool Pokemon. I hope that you guys did find this helpful if you're deciding to build around Dhelmise. If you did find it helpful, make sure to please leave a like down below for me. Also, make sure you stick around because there will be more of these coming up, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.